If you are what you say you are, a superstar, then have no fear. The camera's here and the microphones, and they wanna know. Yeah. A fresh, cool young Lou, trying to cash his microphone check 212. Wanna believe my own hype, but it's too untrue. The world brought me to my knees. What have you brung you? Did you improve on the design? Did you do something new? Where your name in on the guest list? Who brung you? You, the more famous person you come through, and the sexy lady.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for joining me. Wherever you are joining me, rate the show, comment, agree, disagree, but whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated. If you're joining me anywhere on these interwebs, I do appreciate it, whether that's YouTube, X, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch. We do appreciate it. Riptide Media Networks and the 102.9 The Game app. Make sure you download that wherever you download your apps from. It is a beautiful Tuesday. Well, I shouldn't say beautiful. It's been kind of gloomy over here in Savannah where I am, but hopefully where you are, it's been better. I do, however, like the weather temperature. The temperature last week around this time was tipping into the 90s, and when you're getting into the 90s and it's early May, it doesn't usually bode well for how cool your summer is going to be. And if you're in the South, you know that nobody lives in the South for the summer. Everybody lives in the South for the other 3 seasons. Nobody lives in Florida or Georgia or Alabama because they love the summertime, because it's unbearably hot. It's unbearably humid. We get through it. We endure it the same way that people in the North endure the winter. See, that's all. Like we rarely look at the counterbalance to what people complain about in a certain region of the world, right? Because people with that snow up north, no, but you're dealing with the heat down south. And it's interesting too, because there's no real line of demarcation. Like, you can't get to a place in the country where there's, at least on the east side and in the Midwest, where it's temporal all the time. The only place that I've heard about it being temporal is in Southern California. Southern California is the only place that I've ever heard people say, oh, well, no, it's like this year round. Everywhere else, you're dealing with the extremes of one or the other. And so I'm not complaining about the heat in the South. I am, however, saying it's a little bit early to be tipping these 90s. We need you to hold off until somewhere around June. Then we're going to be okay with the 90s. But tipping 90s in May, May 4th and May 3rd, that's crazy. But it just shows you global warming is real. Global warming is real. You know what else is real? And I'm going to start this off on something really serious, because I think it's serious, but I don't necessarily think it's serious for the reasons other people think it's serious for. Paul Pierce was on Undisputed, and he dropped the N-word. He dropped it talking to Keyshawn. It was said in a way, a conversational way, a way I hear the word used all the time. Now, full disclosure, I do not use the N-word, right? I don't use the N-word. Never. I never use it. Not ever. And this isn't just cap because I'm on a radio show. I don't use the word. But there's a reason why I don't use the word, because when I was younger, much, much younger, like, I haven't used this word in an extremely long time. But there's a reason why I don't use the word. And that was because when I was younger, in my 20s, I was DJing karaoke. Like DJing karaoke. I was a karaoke DJ. And I had gigs probably 4 nights a week while I was also teaching and working in media and all the other stuff that I did, right? And I was DJing and we're playing songs. And so a white guy and his friends, young dudes, they come up, they want to sing Juicy. Now, Juicy is the famous song by Biggie Smalls. If you haven't heard of it, go and check it out. But pretty like prevalent in the song is the part where it says, "Now if you don't know, now you know," N-word. So the song, I put the song on. I can tell that these guys, this is what they're here for. They're here for that line. There's nowhere else really in the song where he actually uses the N-word. But in that place, he uses the N-word. So the song is going on. I'm watching. I'm checking. They're all eyeing each other, looking at each other, right? They get to the part. And if you don't know, now you know. I mute the mics when they try to say the N-word. So I know, because I'm right next to them, I can hear them audibly say the N-word, but it's not on the mics. We're not broadcasting that. And so they keep on with the song, comes up again. I mute the mic. I'm not paying them any attention. I'm just doing it. I'm trying to keep the vibe of the crowd going because it is a tight song, right? And so after the song is over with, like, people are cheering, the dudes are cool, but one of the dudes is mad. He's like, "Yo, why did you keep muting me?" And I'm like, "Come on, man, you know why I was muting you. You was out here trying to say the N-word." And he said something to me, and it was powerful because I'll never forget it. He said, "Well, I don't understand the big deal. Y'all use the word all the time." Now, just on its surface, what he said is true. Black people, many black people, use the N-word all the time. The justification for black people using the N-word all the time is they have taken the power of the word away, right? They have made the word into something different than what it originally meant, right? It's the IGGA versus the IGGER, right? That hard ER. I don't differentiate. The word is the word. I don't like it. Any of my students will tell you I don't like it. Any of my players will tell you I don't rock with it. I don't want to hear the word being said. And this is why. Because when that man said that true statement to me, in his mind, the fact that we normalized the word gave him power to use the word, right? It gave him power to use the word. Then I started thinking, there's no other race and or nationality, whatever you want to say, that has a derogatory term about themselves that they use on themselves all the time. We don't hear white people walking around saying, "Yo, what's up, my C word?" We don't hear Jewish people all the time walking around going, "Hey, what's going on, my," right? We don't hear Spanish people walking around calling each other the S word. In my brain, right there in that moment, in that bar where I was doing karaoke at, amongst people, drunk and having a good time and laughing and cheering, I had an epiphany. And I'm not asking anyone else to agree with me. And I don't even befault people who go, "Nah, I'm still using the word." Cool. I'm just not going to use it. I am not going to allow anybody to believe that that word is just a normal word. I'm not going to allow that to be a part of what I do. That's never going to be a word because I understand the power of that word. So I don't use it. I stopped playing songs that had it in it. When I was karaokeing, if somebody asked for a song that had the N-word in it, black or white, nah. You ain't got Juicy? Nope. Unless I could find a version of it that didn't have the N-word in it. I made that my own personal mission. I'm not perfect. There's a lot of things that I do wrong. There's a lot of things that I don't get right. But in my mind at that point in time, and I'm telling you, this was years ago, eons ago, it feels like now, where I stopped using that word and I see the power still exists, which is why I know that it was the right choice. Because if that word didn't have power, if that word didn't have meaning, if that word didn't strike a chord that resonated negatively in this country, why y'all mad at Paul Pierce? If the N-word ain't that big a deal and you know how he used it colloquially, right? He used it in a slang manner. Why y'all mad at him? Why y'all saying he's unprofessional? If the word doesn't have any power, if the word doesn't have any meaning anymore, if the word doesn't hold the same gravitas it held many moons ago when that was the way that they referred to us because they didn't look at us as humans, if that word doesn't have that same feeling anymore, then why are y'all mad? That's what I'm trying to understand. If the word isn't the word that you guys are saying it is, then why are you mad? You're mad because that word still has power, because that word still has meaning. So do not do this. When some white guy says it jokingly, in passing, don't give them, oh, he was young. When we see the past tweets come up of white football and baseball and hockey players who said the word and got caught using the word or used the word just trying to be funny or trying to be goofy, we don't need to give them a pass. Stick them up the same way you sticking up Paul Pierce. Because that word apparently still has a lot of power. When you see the black guy that gave his white homeboy the pass to use the word, stick him up the same way you sticking up Paul Pierce. Ain't no free passes out here. There's not a time where that word is going to be applicable for anyone to use, but especially not people who look like and come from the people who were oppressing. That don't make no sense to me. So now we're going to be all up in arms. We're going to be all hullabaloo about Paul Pierce because he wasn't professional. See, here's the problem, right, with the line that we have between podcast and webcast and then broadcast television, right? Because if Paul Pierce was on any of his shows that he does, you know, that comes out on YouTube or on a podcast, him using the N-word wouldn't be a big deal. If you've listened to him talk with Kevin Garnett, that word is used all the time. I hear LeBron James, who's probably the most squeaky clean dude in the history of the NBA. I've heard him use the word when talking. Heard him use the word on the shop. I've heard him use the word. I've heard others use the word on their podcast. But see, That's the difference between a podcast or a webcast and what is required when you do a broadcast production. Because Fox Sports 1 is trying to appeal to everybody. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, old, young. It doesn't matter. They want to appeal to everybody. And so they want you to be controversial without saying anything controversial. They want you to be divisive, but they don't want you to be divisive in terms of emotion due to something real. They want you to be divisive on topics. They want you to they want Skip Bayless to talk bad about LeBron James because they know there's half of the country who loves LeBron James and there's half of the country who doesn't. They don't want Skip Bayless. They don't want Skip Bayless to say something controversial that the entire country can look at him and go, that's wrong, or that's right, depending upon where we are. We have to take responsibility for the power that we put in the hands of people. Who told you people that Paul Pierce was somebody that should be on TV? At every turn, he showed you he's not really interested in doing this the way that you guys have done it in the past. So you're either going to embrace him and everything that he brings to the table, or you don't have him on. But you can't put him on. You can't put him on. You can't have him on your show. Know what he does. It's almost like they've never listened to Paul Pierce content outside of what he does on Fox Sports 1 or when he was on ESPN. It's almost like they never watched him move. They don't see how he's operating in retirement. Paul Pierce, in his mind, is done. Paul Pierce is the example of the old man, right? The old man who doesn't have a lot of tact anymore because he's like, yo, I've done everything. I've been through everything. I don't have to justify myself to anyone. That's how Paul Pierce is. Because when you are a professional athlete and you spend, most of your professional life, you spend most of your professional life as an athlete at a high level, being scrutinized, being ridiculed, but making enough money to be able to sustain yourself and your family for generations, then guess what? Once you're finished, you feel like the old man. I don't have anything else I have to prove. I don't have anything else I got to bring. So when Paul Pierce says the N-word, and he doesn't say it maliciously, he says it in passing as an adjective or as a noun, right? He just says it, not even really as a noun, as a pronoun. When he says it, and everybody loses their mind. Everybody loses their mind. All I keep thinking is, but you guys told me that this word didn't have any power anymore. You guys told me that this word didn't matter anymore. I got countless amounts of young kids that I'm around every single day, teenagers that I'm around every single day that don't see the issue with the word, that don't understand why people lose their minds over it. So if this is the generation of it's not a big deal anymore, why y'all mad at Paul Pierce? . It reeks of hypocrisy. You don't get to arbitrarily decide when the word is and when the word is not applicable. And when I say you, I mean general public. You don't get to decide when you want to be outraged and when you don't, because that is hypocrisy. I don't like when I hear black people say it. So I definitely don't want to hear anyone else say it. But I give everybody the latitude to live in their truth, right? I give everybody the latitude to live in their truth. So if you say it, understand there's consequences with it. But make sure that those consequences are consistent. So the next time, and I know I said this, but I want to reiterate it, the next time that we hear about some white person that said the word about somebody that is not black saying the word, let's not give them the benefit of the doubt, because many people are not giving Paul Pierce the benefit of the doubt. And we know how he's using the word. We know he doesn't mean anything malicious. We know he's not using it in any type of derogatory manner. We know that for a fact. And yet, people are still killing him. People are still killing him. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of women using the B word, right? A woman will be with her homegirls and they'll call each other B word, just playing around, right? Just playing around, just joking around. They've taken the power. And then a man says the B word and people lose their mind. Heck, Queen Latifah had a whole song about it back in the day. Who you calling the B? U-N-I-T-Y. U-N-I-T-Y, that's a unity. That's an old song. But even back then, the B word had power. So guess what I don't do? I don't run around calling people the B word. I don't run around calling women the B word, because I know how they feel about that word when I use it. It shouldn't even matter. And it doesn't to me. It doesn't matter how they feel about that word when they use it. Never once in the history of my life have I thought to myself, well, women call women B words all the time. Why shouldn't I be able to call them a B word? That is like saying, well, I know that there's an African American History Month, and I know that there's a Latino American History Month, and I know there's an Asian American and Pacific Islander History Month, but why is there not a White History Month? Why are you worried about everybody else? By the way, if you think this is political, then y'all need to look up what politics mean. Because nothing that I'm talking about right now is political. This is just right and wrong. Right? Because Paul Pierce is being skewered right now. He is being put through the fire for a term that a lot of this country has told us should no longer have the meaning. We have people who are saying, hey, y'all got to let that stuff from the past go. Those same people are saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe what Paul Pierce said. There are people who have said, hey, we off that stuff from the past. Those same people are the people who are saying, oh my God, I can't believe what Paul Pierce did. We can't have it both ways. We can't have it both ways. When I come back, We'll be talking about a massive contract that's been given to a quarterback in the NFL. I'm going to tell you what I think about it, and I'm going to tell you why a lot of y'all are delusional out there. This is Talk Spicy on the Riptide Media Networks.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy, a Riptide Media production. 102.9 The Game app. Make sure that you download that wherever you are downloading apps. I am Coach Gene Clemens. Thank you for being back with me. In case you didn't hear it last night, or you weren't around last night, you weren't paying attention last night, the Lions just slipped a smooth bit of like juicy news in. Jared Goff, the quarterback for the Lions, agreed to a 4-year, $212 million extension. $170 million of it guaranteed, right? 4 years, $212 million, $170 million of it guaranteed. If you see me looking down, it's because I want to know the percentage of guaranteed money in this contract. And from what it's looking like, that's 80% of the contract is fully guaranteed. There's no doubt that Jared Goff is going to make all $212 million of this contract. Need I remind you that he was already on a $100+ million contract before this year. Now, here's some things I want you to I want you to recognize, right? Because this is the inequality that I speak of when I talk about quarterbacks and how they are perceived in the NFL, right? Because I have not heard anyone say, oh my God, I can't believe they paid Jared Goff almost $250,000. I have not heard anyone say, oh my God, I can't believe they gave Jared Goff that much money. I have not heard that. Yet, I have heard that about Lamar Jackson. I've heard that about Jalen Hurts. I've heard that about Deshaun Watson. Now, Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson have achieved at a level that I would say is higher than what Jared Goff has achieved at. Now, maybe I'm wrong because Jared Goff was able to, get them to an NFC championship game because he did represent in a Super Bowl once, right? So maybe I'm wrong in the fact that they have done more. I'll just say this. If you line up all three quarterbacks and you're being honest with yourself, all four quarterbacks at their peak, right, at what you believe to be the height of their powers, are you taking Jared Goff? Or are you taking those other three quarterbacks? Right? This isn't a diss on Jared Goff. I just want you to understand how his contract is being viewed based off how those quarterbacks' contracts are being viewed. So Jared Goff, when he was traded to the Lions, he was on a 4-year, $134 million contract with $110 million of that guaranteed. So this year, 2024, he would be going into his final season under that contract. That's $32 million a year. With this contract, they essentially gave him a $20 million increase. Like, don't get it twisted, ladies and gentlemen. They are paying him like he is Patrick Mahomes. 4 years, $212 million. That is $53 million a year. $53 million a year. That is $21 million more than what he's being paid right now. I want you to sit here and tell me that you believe that Jared Goff is a $50 million a year quarterback. Don't tell me that's the going rate, because you don't have to pay him. And if somebody else pays him, then guess what you do? Take your $50 million and go pay somebody else. I want you to tell me with your eyes that you believe that Jared Goff is a $50 million a year quarterback. I want you with your eyes to tell me that you believe that Jared Goff is worth paying $50 million a year. And if you do believe that, right? Because I'm not mad if you believe that. But if you do believe that, then tell me how it is you could have any thought processes that Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson or Deshaun Watson is not worth that. $53 million a year. When this contract extension kicks in, Jared Goff's going to be 30. Now, in quarterback years, that's like prime, right? In quarterback years, that should be prime. But not every quarterback's the same. Just because we've seen other quarterbacks be good well into their 30s doesn't mean that Jared Goff will be. And Jared Goff still has a lot of issues in his game. He still has a lot of things about his game that you should not like. Yet, Jared Goff, when it's all said and done, right? Because don't think he's not going to get another contract after this 4 years is up. Maybe not by the Lions, but by somebody else. We just saw what what they were giving out in Atlanta, and he's not better than Jared Goff. They're about the same. So now Jared Goff's going to get $50 million a year, right? Which means that when it's all said and done, if that's where he lands at, he will have made close to $400 million in his career. Now, obviously, we know, cut that in half, right? So he would have made close to $200 million in his career. Because we know that athletes are taxed heavy, blah, 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 right? Doesn't that sound crazy when you say that out loud? Jared Goff is going to get $53 million a year, right? That is top of the food chain money. That is top of the food chain money. Meanwhile, Patrick Mahomes makes $45 million a year. Jared Goff is going to make $8 million more per year than what Patrick Mahomes makes. Right? Like what are we talking about here? So in 2025, when the contracts kick in, right? When his contract kicks in, when Mahomes' contract kicks in, Mahomes will make in that year $66 million. Now, I'm sure both of their I don't know how they're going to be situated, but I'm sure that Jared Goff's is probably going to be top heavy, similar to what Mahomes is, right? Because you got to remember that Mahomes, his contract extension has not kicked in yet, right? So again, next year Mahomes is going to make $66 million. That's how his thing breaks down. His cap. I'm sorry, that's what his cap hit is. His cap hit will be $66 million, right? Meanwhile, I don't know where Jared Goff's cap hit's going to be at. But what I'm telling you is that for two players who are so drastically different, for two players who are about the same age, right? For two players who are so drastically different, for two players who are about the same age, Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff are making similar money. The only difference is that Patrick Mahomes signed a long-term deal, so his deal is going to allow these other dudes to make more money than him overall. His 10-year, $450 million deal, that $45 million average salary, right, is going to be less over the 4 years than Jared Goff's $53 million. Yet people will sit here and tell me that Jalen Hurts is not worth his money, that Jalen Hurts is on the hot seat, that Jalen Hurts is that Jalen Hurts is the problem because Jalen Hurts signed a 5-year, $255 million extension. Right? He signed a 5-year, $255 million extension. So now I just want to know, because I think at the essence of this, we can just take it back to the playground. Right? Just take it back to the playground. If I put Jalen Hurts in front of you and I put Jared Goff in front of you, who are you taking? Because I really shouldn't even put Lamar Jackson in this. The only reason I put Lamar Jackson in this is because Lamar Jackson's people have had questioned the Lamar Jackson contract, right? Or whether or not he is even worthy of that type of money. Nobody even questioned whether or not Jared Goff was worth this money. I'm here to tell you, I question whether or not Jared Goff is worth this money. I 100% believe that you can get somebody else to come out, complete 67% of their passes, throw for 4,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. I do not think that those are numbers that say, especially when you think about the weapons that the Lions have at receiver, at tight end, and at running back. I do not look at those and go, oh my gosh, I got to get that man his money. Need I remind you, this is his height. This is what he is. In 2018, year 3 for the Rams, in 2018, he threw for 4,600 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions on 64% completion percentage. Well, let's say 64.9. He didn't reach that number again for the next 5 years. He's never duplicated those numbers. The 2023 season was the closest he came. Now I'm supposed to believe that is what he's going to do every single year for sure. I guarantee you, and this is no shot or shade at Jared Goff. There are other quarterbacks who can put up those numbers. There are other quarterbacks who could put up those numbers. Need I remind you that in his down year, in this down year that Jalen Hurts had, he threw for 3,800 yards, right? Because this is how you have to equate it when you talk about guys who give you production with their feet as well as with their arm, right? He threw for 3,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. But he also ran for 600 yards, 15 touchdowns. So when you put those numbers together, that's 38 touchdowns that he's accounted for. That's 4,400 yards that he's accounted for. Well, the 4,400 yards versus the 4,500 yards, 8 more touchdowns, and only 3 more interceptions. But this is the off year. That was the down year for Jalen Hurts. who's only 4 years into his career, and he's 25 years old. He's not pushing 30. They were questioning that contract, and he's 25 years old. He's not pushing 30. Jalen Hurts still has theoretically 10 more years in front of him. He hasn't had the 8-year career, 9 year, what is it, 8 years, 9 years? 8-year career that Jared Goff has had. He hasn't had that amount of time. And yet, people question that $255 million contract. You know what I like about the $255 million contract extension? Is that he'll still be under 30 when it's over. Or he'll still be 30 when it's over. So if he performs like I believe he's going to perform over these next few years, back up the Brinks truck. Because if you're giving Jared Goff $53 million a year guaranteed, what are you going to have to pay that man? And that's before I even get to how people tried to make it seem as if Lamar Jackson wasn't worth the contract he received. That he didn't warrant a 5-year, $260 million contract. Hey, by the way, shout out to my boy Lamar Jackson. He got $135 million guaranteed at signing. That means at signing, stroke me a check for $135. Right? Like, that is great. But when we break down Lamar Jackson's contract, right? When we break down what his contract looks like, so Jared Goff is going to make more money than the 2-time NFL MVP. Well, he was just next up. That's all of the stupid things that they say to justify these contracts. Well, he was the next man up. What does that mean? And why should that matter? Why should it matter that he's the next man up? Does anyone have any discernment? We don't have to pay these guys all this money. It's not necessary. You can have a walk away. And again, I love the fact that stick 'em up, Jared Goff. Keep getting that money. But don't then turn around, people, and tell me how much you applaud Jared Goff getting this money, only to then turn around and tell me how much you don't like the contract in terms of what Lamar Jackson's gotten, what Lamar Jackson's received. Don't do that. And Lamar Jackson didn't get his contract extension early. He had to wait. I am totally on the way in which this is going down. But if you guys are sitting back here telling me you think that Jared Goff is worth the same amount of money as Patrick Mahomes, as Jalen Hurts, as Lamar Jackson, I'm gonna call BS. I'm gonna call BS. And hey, we're not even thinking about this. If you're giving Jared Goff that type of money, then what are they going to pay that guy out in San Francisco? Because everyone thinks that guy is a top level guy. Is San Francisco going to back up the Brinks truck for him? Could we see Brock Purdy get a 4-year, 5-year, $300 million deal? Hey, and shout out to Brock Purdy, right? Because he's not on the 5-year jump off. He's on the 4-year plan. So he doesn't have to wait that extra year. Now I can tell you if that was me, I'm franchise tagging him. Brock Purdy is going into year number 3 in the NFL. He's only on a 4-year contract because he wasn't a first-round pick, so they don't have that protected 5th year. I said I would franchise tag him. They get 2 more years under that rookie contract that's very, very, very team-friendly, right? I look at that and go, that 2 years, this next 2 years, this year, 2024, 2025, and the 2025-2026 seasons, that is the window for the San Francisco 49ers to win a championship. They should be dumping all their money into those ancillary pieces because you have a quarterback on not only a rookie deal, but a super cheap rookie deal, right? He was a 7th round pick, because he was Mr. Irrelevant. So, like, take advantage. But make no mistake about it. Brock Purdy just put up Jared Goff numbers with a better completion percentage in an offense that runs more than even that offense does, right? Than even that Detroit Lions offense does. He put up Jared Goff numbers. So you got to at least pencil him in for 4 years, $250 million on the extension, right? 5 years, $300 million. 5 years, $300 million. You got to do it, right? At least, at the very least, and not even 5 years, $300 million, because 5 years, $300 million would be less than 50 a year, or just that 50 a year. If Jared Goff got 53, Brock Purdy, who I think was second in MVP voting, maybe, he's got to get more. Like this Jared Goff contract, people talked about the Deshaun Watson contract having setting a precedent, right? And messing up the market. But the truth is that everybody looked at that Deshaun Watson contract and then they forgot all about it. Nobody set their contract off the Deshaun Watson contract. Deshaun Watson got a 1 of 1. Nobody set it off, right? This Jared Goff contract, 4 years, $212 million. Nobody who thinks they're better than Jared Goff is going to want less money than that. And my point is that why pay him that? Like Jared Goff is not the, oh my gosh, everything that we do rests on him. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Jalen Hurts. Everything that they do as a team rests on whether or not those people are good at their jobs. If they're not good at their jobs, the team doesn't do well. Doesn't matter how good the defense is. If those guys are not good at their job, the team doesn't do well. And there's nobody to replace them. That's the difference, right? It's not just that they're really good at their job. There's nobody to come in and give you the facsimile of what they do. If you put somebody else in, they're going to win a different way if they're able to win. There's people who can come in and do exactly what Jared Goff's doing. There's people who can come in and do exactly what Brock Purdy is doing. Nobody else is going to come in and do what Josh Allen's doing in Buffalo. Nobody's going to come in and do what Patrick Mahomes is doing in Kansas City. And sure as hell, nobody's coming in and doing what Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts does. Even Joe Burrow, for as good as Joe Burrow is, somebody can come in and do what Joe Burrow does. You want to know how we know? Because we just saw Jake Browning go out there and look like he should be a starting NFL quarterback. That's why. Who else in the league has that level of gravitas? Deshaun Watson, possibly, because when he's at the height of his powers, we didn't get a chance to see it with the Browns, right? And we'll be talking to Zach Jackson here in the next segment about the Browns and about Watson and everything. We haven't really had the chance to see it out of Watson on a consistent basis, but when he's at the height of his power, nobody does what he does. Right? There's nobody that they can put in to do what he does. You got to do it a different way. With Jared Goff and guys like him, somebody else can come in and do it exactly the same way that he does it. And that's just not the guy that you should pay $50+ million to. Now, again, I ain't mad at Jared Goff because he didn't pay himself and he should be trying to get all the money. Get all the money you can, Jared Goff. But man, I just be looking at him like, why are we acting as if all of these players are the same? They're clearly not. And until we start acknowledging the fact that they are clearly not the same, we're going to keep running into this issue. Right? Shout out to Jared Goff. Get your money. Who's up next? Somebody else about to get broke off. Maybe the 49ers are smart and they go to Brock Purdy and say, hey, we're going to pay you more right now to pay you less overall. Is that okay? Maybe that's how they get it done. I don't know. When we come back, we'll be talking to Zach Jackson of The Athletic. He covers the Browns. We'll be talking to him about everything Cleveland Browns related. This is Talk Spicy on the Riptide Media Network.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have any body to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
Okay, men, this is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna go grocery shopping, cook, clean, Be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. I know you won't. Because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, Riptide Media Networks, and the 102.9 The Game app. Make sure you download that if you haven't already. What you should also do is you should follow this guy who is next to me on the screen right now. He is at Akron Jackson. I always like that name, like a little play on Action Jackson. At Akron Jackson, Zach Jackson, who covers the Browns and the NFL for The Athletic. So solidarity to the brothers over at The Athletic. It's been a fun. I think it's been a very fun off season that has led up through these rookie mini camps. It's been some times in the past where I felt as if it was really like cumbersome, like really just we were almost kind of drugged down by things, and it kind of started getting that way a little bit at the end with the quarterback talk. But overall, I think it's been an enjoyable offseason. What's the offseason been like for you so far?
Well, different. This was the last one without a first-round pick, so that certainly affects what I do, as far as the Browns. Quiet, and I know this makes for bad talk, Gene, on the podcast, but we're not going to know anything about this Browns team till at least a month into the season, right? And probably more than that. And I shouldn't say we're not going to know anything because we know this is a good roster. They should have high expectations. But until we see how healthy and effective Deshaun Watson is, until we know when Nick Chubb's coming back and, what percentage he's at, we're not going to know a lot about this team. So, look, the AFC's loaded. We all know that. There's a bunch of teams chomping at it, getting ready to get out there and thinking they can finally unseat Patrick Mahomes. None of them probably can, right? The Browns think they're one. But if they're going to get to that level, we're going to need to see it way, way down the road. And what they're doing here is getting ready for it, and it's important internally. But it's not creating a lot of splash outside because they kind of have their team, and that was reflected in free agency and the draft. They've made some additions, some guys that can help. But they kind of have their team, and they have to see it healthy, and they have to see it try to click.
Well, I mean, I think that's a very interesting point. I believe when you're not making a lot of noise is when you're at the most dangerous, right? Like when you've been able to kind of stay out of the headlines, stay out of the limelight, stay out of the clicks. That means that you're kind of headed in the right direction, and you have an opportunity to still maybe not surprise anyone because no one's going to be surprised by what Cleveland brings to the table, but you get a chance to kind of just operate in a little bit more of anonymity. And I think that's good. I know that they just had their rookie minicamp, and you were telling me before we got started that unlike a lot of teams that bring in essentially an entire full roster of dudes so they could go through kind of everything, this is really more the Browns do a lot more of an instructional thing. Can you explain to me kind of what their thought process is with that and what they do?
Yeah, it kind of goes to the larger point of they have their team, right? They picked 6 guys, Gene, but only 3 of them are even guaranteed to make this team. It's just an older team. And so, of course, they want to bring those draft picks along. And, of course, they hope some of those undrafted guys hit and, whether it's through the practice squad or through special teams or whatever, make it. But they're bringing them in and they're just getting them ready because in the OTAs, like even for Michael Hall, the 2nd-round pick, and Zach Zinter, the 3rd-round pick, like these guys are going to be 3rd in line, when the veterans are there. So they're just kind of getting everybody acclimated. This is what they do. They really like the pick of Michael Hall. He's really excited. He grew up in Cleveland. But he's a down the road, and his role is to play in Jim Schwartz's defense, which is get upfield and rush the passer. Attack first, attack second, deal with the consequences, right? So they're bringing back their top 4 defensive tackles, and 3 of those guys are 30. Michael Hall doesn't turn 21 until next month. So that's a pick for down the road. Zach Zinter comes in. He was a 5-year college guy. He's played a lot, but he's behind Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, both Pro Bowl guards. They're not going anywhere this year. Now, can Zach Zinter be a starter in 25? Do the Browns have to make a salary cap related move? We'll see how that goes. But it's just not about right now. So they did sign the undrafted quarterback from Northern Colorado, Jacob Sturman. He was in camp. They did have 6 or 7 other tryout players in there, with 5 or so first-year guys who have been on the practice squad, been at the bottom of the roster for various reasons. But like when you say what happened at Browns rookie minicamp, man, they taught them the terminology, they introduced them to each other, and it's just getting those guys ready. So 3 or 4 weeks down the road, when they're getting to the end of the summer program, they can make a real judgment on who's getting it quickly and who's not. There's not one guy that they're asking to come in and play in September for this team.
The signing of Sermon, does that mean we're iffy on the availability of DTR this offseason, and Sermon, like, just he serves as another guy to be able to give them an arm that's healthy at camp?
Yeah, that's exactly what that means. So Watson is hoping to throw during OTAs, but I don't think it's going to be in the team setting. So if we look at it, it's Watson, Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley, and then DTR. But DTR finished the year on IR. So I take the Sermon thing to read. The Browns have been pretty vague about it, that he's just not fully cleared. So they're going to go through starting next week, 10 OTAs and then 3 full minicamp practices, where Jameis will be the 1, Huntley will be the 2, and then whatever's left, which isn't much, will probably go to him unless DTR is ready. But they learned last year that you got to be ready with the quarterbacks, and it kind of worked out because they stumbled into Flacco, right? Because they found PJ Walker, who wasn't great, but at least had played in the league. And PJ Walker won a game for him. He quickly fell out of favor, but he won a game for him. So they just want as many guys in there. And, they did all their homework, Gene, and they knew they weren't going back to Flacco. And the main reason was he was too popular in the locker room. As strange as that is, they knew for Deshaun's everything about Deshaun, and we can get into that if you want. But they decided on Jameis. That's who they were going to pursue. They had done the work on Tyler Huntley, and they thought that another team would sign him, and no one did. And they were surprised, and I was surprised. So they got Tyler Huntley on a minimum contract, and they're going to give him a go. And whether they end up keeping him, cutting him, turning him into a late-round pick like they did with Dobbs last year, or playing him in situations, because Deshaun Watson is not a quarterback sneaker even when he's healthy. We'll see. But it's a big time for Jameis. Jameis has been around forever, but it's a really big next 4 weeks for Tyler Huntley.
I'm interested in when you say they didn't bring back Flacco because of the popularity in the locker room, and I just look at it from the standpoint of popularity. Yes, he's no spring chicken. He also had a propensity to throw the ball to the other team.
He sure did,
quite a bit. That's not something that I'm like, okay, if I'm in the locker room next to him going, oh, I need him over the other guy. But then there's this Jameis Winston, right? And here's my thing. It's not necessarily even about the turnovers, because I think a lot's made it. That's much to do about nothing when you think about Jameis Winston's career in Tampa Bay. He threw interceptions in bunches. He didn't throw consistent interceptions. He would just throw 4 in a game. Then he would have like a game where he might throw 1, or a game where he doesn't throw 1. Then he'd throw 5 in a game, right? And so when you talk about popularity, there is no quarterback in the NFL that has an ability to endear themselves to other players in the locker room like Jameis Winston. If he goes out there, like if Watson's not ready to play, and then Jameis Winston goes out there and does the Joe Flacco, if he's, which, by the way, they kind of brought in a very similar guy in respects to arm talent and the ability to drive it. Yeah. But younger, like I don't think people realize, like, Jameis Winston's not very old. He's just been in the league for a long time now because he came in young.
Right.
Like, is there a thought that, hey, we might, Deshaun Watson might stay hurt a little bit longer if Winston is really like lighting it up? Or is the plan, as soon as this guy is 100% we need to get him back on the field because we can't afford to like have his psyche, broken.
Yeah, psyche's part of it. Popularity is not all of it. There's a lot of layers to this, Gene. There's no doubt about it. Deshaun Watson's the number one as soon as he's healthy and ready. And there's the $230 million, the 3 first-rounders all say that. And they finally did see the better version of Deshaun before the injury last year. I mean, this team went into Baltimore, came from double digits down multiple times and won. Deshaun did not throw a single incompletion in the second half. Like, they looked like an AFC contender, and him playing well was part of it. So, when it comes to Jameis, yes, they liked it. He's done this. And we all do feel like Jameis is 40 because we've all known him since his very first college game, right, on national TV when he lit it up and then went on and won the Heisman. And that was a long, long time ago. But for the Browns, it's got to be Watson. So they went to Jameis saying, we know that he's been there. He's done that. He's played in different offenses. He's played well, as you've mentioned. If Deshaun gets a high ankle sprain or concussion and misses a game or two, the Jameis can keep things afloat. So if Deshaun misses half the season again, this team doesn't have the ceiling that it does, right? But as far as the spring, when the season ended in January, they were quick to say, Deshaun is ahead of schedule. Deshaun's going to be there. And then as the spring went on, they started backtracking. So Jameis is going to get ready. He's going to get the first snaps for, like I said, these up to 10 OTAs and the 3 days of minicamp. And then the hope is that when they report for camp on July 26th or whenever it is, that Deshaun will be the number one. I don't think they know that yet, and they'll work with the doctors, and they certainly won't overdo it, right? Jameis still has the arm to throw it a mile down the field. But this is Watson, this is Winston, and then everything else is TBD, TBA, a little uncertain, depending on multiple things. And to me, the biggest being obviously Deshaun's availability and readiness. So there's moving parts here. There's Jerry Jeudy. There's not a clear answer at number 2 tight end. There's a second-year guy in Cedric Tillman who showed some flashes last year, but it certainly wasn't consistent. It wasn't for the whole season. Is he your 3 receiver? Is he your 5 receiver? So there's a lot to be settled. Not settled because nothing's settled, but there's a lot to be figured out. And there's opportunity for Jameis and for all those guys that I mentioned to really, build some chemistry and show this team some things over the next month or so.
Yeah. I think the interesting part for me for Jameis is if he is afforded the opportunity to start, if Watson's not ready or for some reason, he comes up and he's afforded the opportunity to start and he's able to put good film together. This is the chance for him to possibly find his way onto a team where he gets the opportunity to jumpstart his career as a starter. I really still don't quite understand the New Orleans situation, the way he was handled in New Orleans, and why they chose to not really give him a legitimate opportunity to start. Once
Carr.
No, I mean, even before Carr, though.
Right? Yeah.
Andy Dalton. There we go.
Yes.
Like, they had Andy Dalton. Like, Winston gets hurt. He's trying to play through injury, like he always has. They have to sit him down. Dalton comes in and plays ball, and then they just went, "Oh no, this will be good enough for us for the year." And they essentially just threw away an entire year,
right?
Instead of putting Winston back in and allowing him to play. It was really weird. It was almost as if, this was a Sean Payton thing. And once Sean Payton was gone, they just wanted to play out the string, if you will. It didn't make any sense. So I think for Winston, this is not a great opportunity. I like the fact that he's going in with his eyes open. This isn't visions of grandeur or whatever. Like, he understands, I'm here to service this man and make sure that I keep the thing hot for him. You were talking about, Nick Chubb. Is there really a thought that Nick Chubb is going to come back and be Nick Chubb after the injury we saw?
Well, there's a hope there. There's some reality internally, right? He took a pay cut from the team. The team, who doesn't talk at all about contract negotiations, was very upfront that Nick Chubb's going to have to take a pay cut to come back. So Gene, it was 2 major surgeries on the same knee, the same one that he had repaired 7 or 8 years ago after that nasty injury at Georgia. This was a nasty injury. Nick Chubb is 28, going to be 29 years old, right? Like, so the reality is the Browns have to prepare, and they have other guys. But one they brought in is Nyheim Hines, who's also coming off an ACL. Another one is Jerome Ford, who got his chance last year and performed well, but then it became clear that he's not a number one. And Jerome Ford has a unique skill set and fits the offense the Browns want to be when they're wide open and Watson's healthy and doing it, but they haven't seen that either, right? So they're going to bring Nick Chubb along slowly. He is certainly not going to be fully cleared at the beginning of camp. Is he participating in camp at all? Is he PUP eligible? It's too early to know. And that's not just me speculating. That's kind of a hint from the Browns that he's just now starting to run on land, that it's not going to be until June or July, and he gets to some landmarks to where they're going to know. So I think the ideal world is Nick Chubb debuts in October or November, is on a very limited pitch count, and then the Browns, A, protect themselves by continuing to explore other options and bring him along slowly, and B, hold out hope that if you do get to December and Nick Chubb is something close to what he used to be, that he's fresh and ready to tear it up then, right? But I certainly think that they have operated under the reality of that we may have seen the last of the best version of Nick Chubb. So, if anybody can come back from this, it's this dude. He's the ultimate low-maintenance superstar. And you could also make the case that 70% of Nick Chubb is still really good, especially if you can keep him in the bullpen till later in the year, till the weather turns, until the games get bigger. But there's a lot of mystery still surrounding that, and I think, I agree with you that, like, probably the reality is we're not going to see Nick Chubb score 12 touchdowns and run for 1,200 yards this season.
Well, and that to me felt like, okay, now was a great chance for a philosophy turn. I look at the receiving core for, the Browns, and I know everybody is like, well, Jerry Jeudy is this, and I heard what Mark Schlereth said, and calling Jerry Jeudy a bust, which I think is laughable when you look at like what Jerry Jeudy has had to endure in Denver over his tenure. I mean, how many different quarterbacks did he have to have, and 3 different coaches now, and that type of thing. But when you add a guy like Jerry Jeudy to go along with Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, and then you look at the Cedric Tillmans and then even guys like James Prochet, who they were able to pick up, and then you mix that with David Njoku. Is there a chance that what we're looking at is an understanding that we're going to win games differently? Because we saw they didn't win games the way that they were winning them at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year. Is this leaning into that and saying, hey, we want to put together the team that was able to do what they were doing, what we were doing at the end of the year, and give that more of a bolstered effect?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so exhausting about this whole Watson thing and still so mysterious, is that he has played so little, and that when he has had his good games, there's been so little chance to build upon it that we don't know, Gene. We know that. I would say this: the Browns paid Jerry Jeudy like they trust him. However, they are very, very clear that, like, Amari's their one, and David Njoku is not a tight end. Like, he's a wide receiver. He's a hybrid tight end. He's all of these things. Like, they almost look at Jeudy like a bonus, right? They say he brings us an element of speed that we certainly didn't have, but they don't know. There's a new coordinator. They're not going to see Watson on the field until July at the earliest. Like, there's a lot of maybes here. So, I think Jerry Jeudy can produce for them. Will it ever be big rate? I don't know. Why did they give him the contract? Strictly because they're outspending every other team, and because the cap is going up, the market is going up. They were willing to take that chance that if it hits, they get the discount. But, like, what's it look like on day 1 or even week 6 for Jerry Jeudy? I don't know. They like the speed. They like that he can play inside and outside. But until they see him on the field with Watson, with Amari, how fast does Cedric Tillman, come along? I don't know exactly where he fits. So they feel better about the state of the pass game with Njoku's huge season and with Amari Cooper still being Amari Cooper. But until they see Jerry Jeudy do it, in exactly how he fits, I don't think they know any more than us. They were willing to take that chance on that speed. And we were all like, when they traded a 5th and 6th round pick for him, it's like, that makes sense, right? This guy's got a lot to prove. And then they immediately give him the extension And it's like, oh, that's kind of risky because he's never done it. You're right. There are absolutely reasons to point to why he's never done it, but he's just never done it in the NFL.
Yeah, but in my thought process is if everyone's saying that wide receiver now is the value, right? The wide receiver is the value. What he's getting paid isn't abnormal if this is the type of offense you're planning to employ.
Yes.
If you're looking to play 11 personnel on a regular basis, if that's what you're planning to have out there, 3 wide receivers, and Njoku as your wide receiver tight end hybrid who could do everything and essentially like allow you to kind of transform all of your different formations. It's a great value to have somebody as versatile as Jeudy can be when he's at his best. And then having guys who can get the ball to everyone. The one thing we do know about Jameis Winston does not care who you are.
No.
Like he's going to throw the ball to the dude. Like if you're there, he's throwing it to you. So he's not going to be playing favorites. He's going to be getting the ball and passing it around. I do wonder about the thought process behind not bringing in a back that I would say is formidable, like somebody that's really going to go, oh, they brought that guy in. They're preparing legitimately for life without Chubb. I like Ford too, but you've already touched on it. Nyheim Hines, to me, I think is a jag. I mean, he's a dude. He has some qualities that's very similar to a bunch of other qualities. What's Deontay Foreman have? Is Pierre Strong going to become something that people thought he would become in New England? It's just a lot of question marks when there were legitimate backs out there to be had in free agency that could have made the loss of a guy like Chubb feel as if, well, if he comes back, it's great. But if he doesn't, we're good. We're moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think you could look at it and say, okay, they're counting on Chubb and they have all these other guys because you don't know how it's going to turn. Or you could say they're not really counting on Chubb and they have all these other guys, and how's it going to work? Pierre Strong is super fast and he's a top 3 special teams player on this team. They didn't run him a lot. He doesn't break a lot of tackles, but he's fast. Ford skill set. Hines played for the new offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, and the special teams coordinator, Bubba Ventrone. So I think they felt like if, this is a solid guy, we know what we're getting in the locker room. And it's just he's coming off an ACL. And I agree, he's never been a full-time player. He's not going to be that. They feel like maybe Foreman is an innings eater type, certainly the short yardage back, and we see. This is a team that's all in on right now, Gene. So if it doesn't work with Chubb, if it doesn't work with Hines, and they need to trade for a back, they'll do it eventually. So I feel like, as we try to translate what are they thinking with those moves, running back is probably the group that comes to mind of, well, it's not sure they know either. And until we see Nick Chubb in uniform, that's probably going to dictate a lot of it, because it's not like in first week Nick Chubb can play. I don't expect it to be week 1. I don't know that. It's not like they're going to let it rip with 18 carries, right? That it's going to be very managed. And I think in that regard, they've at least done a good job in giving options for the committee, regardless of how it does turn out with Chubb.
I'm going to get you out of here on this one, because this is something that I've been just wondering about ever since last year. Have you figured out, or do you have a sense of what allowed David Njoku to hit Super Saiyan mode? Like we've always thought that he was immensely talented.
Yeah.
Ever since he came out of college, but he's never shown what he showed last year. And it wasn't like he jumped out the gate and was all of a sudden this. It was just like boom, 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 and bam. All of a sudden he's like arguably the best tight end in the game. Like what happened? Like, is there something you can point to? Is there something that he's pointed to? Do we have an understanding, or is this just like right place, right time? And
it's a lot of things. It at or near the top of the list is personal maturity. You know, this is a young guy when he was drafted, never a full-time player, even in college, got benched by Freddie Kitchens early in his career for not doing the right things. You know, first-round pick was healthy scratch by Freddie Kitchens, the biggest clown show, right, that there was. So I think it was some of that, Gene. I think it was Kevin Stefanski saying, you know, David is not always going to run the right route or not always going to make the right block. So we're going to minimize what we ask him that, and we're going to try to maximize. They gave him a little more freelance opportunity. They threw him the ball closer to the line and just let him eat. And so I think there was a little bit improved personal maturity. I think there was a little bit improved just confidence in what he could do. And then they found this mix. There was a day in training camp last year, early, when Watson was going, and they were pretty good. Like, I'm no exaggeration, like 8 of 10 balls went to Njoku, and they were all on the money. The ones that weren't got caught anyway, and they went for big gains. Like Grant Delpit, the safety, went on to have a big year and get a contract extension. We did not see him one day in training camp on the right side of things because David Njoku was taking his lunch money every single day. And then it didn't happen early. It didn't really happen. But in that Baltimore game when Watson played well, there was a lot of safe ones that went to Njoku. And I just think his confidence kept going. And then he started saying, give me the ball, give me the ball. And then when Flacco got in there and they became a more vertical offense, he said, I'll do that too. And it just really took off. But I think it was a simplifying of things. And then it was just this burst of David saying, you know, I want to do this. I have to do this. And the little bit of details matching a little bit better fit for his skill set. And like, this dude still has a really high ceiling. I mean, how many guys break out in year 7? None, because they're all in the league by year 3, but not this guy. And so I think the breakout could still be happening.
Well, I mean, obviously it's great for Browns fans because it's if there's any way that you think that Browns fans would love to win, it's great run game and a high quality tight end, right? Yeah. Like that almost speaks to the Cleveland, you know, mystique and what they want done. Zach, I really do appreciate you joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you follow Zach at Akron Jackson. Make sure that you check out all of his work at The Athletic. He's got a thing up now reintroducing you to the draft class. Zach, we really do appreciate it.
All right, Gene, talk to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. When we come back, we'll be talking about more news from the day. This is Talk Spicy on the Riptide Media Network.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have any body to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
Okay, men. This is your time. Maybe you didn't choose this, but you're here now. You're gonna go out there and be an all-star caregiver. It's up to you. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna go grocery shopping, cook, clean, be there emotionally and physically. You gotta dig deeper. Drive them to physical therapy, doctor's appointments. Don't you forget about the pharmacy. I know you won't. Because that's what caregivers do. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. This is your time to show the world, your family, and yourself that you're tougher than tough. Now go out there and be the best caregiver this world has ever seen. Caregiving is tougher than tough. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, Riptide Media Networks and the 102.9 The Game app. I saw a clip or it wasn't a clip. My apologies. I saw a quote where they were talking about this was an anonymous coach apparently, right? And you guys should know how I feel about anonymous, right? You should know I don't feel the greatest whenever somebody is out here quoting anonymous, because like I read anonymous as I read anonymous as cowardly or scared, right? That's how I read it. If you have something to say about somebody, you should be willing to say it. Like you should be willing to put your name on it. And if you're not willing to put your name on it, then you probably shouldn't say it. Anything worth saying is worth standing by. I 100% believe that. I believe that with all my heart, that anything worth saying is worth standing by. And so this anonymous Chicago Bears coach said about Justin Fields, a guy who no longer plays for the Bears, who they decided that for whatever reason, he wasn't the guy. This is what he says. He says, when you watch him, watch his eyes. He tries to see the whole thing and doesn't see anything. His eyes are all over the place, and it's just really hard to watch. It's just bad football. I'm gonna quick sidebar, and I'm gonna come back to what he said. As a high school coach, you don't always get the opportunity to pick your players, and because you don't always get an opportunity to pick your players, sometimes you don't have a lot of talent. But whatever talent you have, it is your responsibility to try to get the maximum amount out of that talent. In the NFL, everybody is immensely talented. And there is no doubt about the fact that Justin Fields is immensely talented. I'm going to say that. And then I'm going to play for you this, because I believe that when people say things better than you, there's really no reason for you to say it again. Just do what they said.
I love coaches that resist the responsibility of coaches, that talk negatively about a dude that can't learn and blah, blah. Man, if everybody could learn, we need less coaches.
Yeah, that's
right. If the group didn't need management, then we wouldn't make as much.
Yep.
I love reading draft evals and somebody's talking about anything other than pedigree, talking about how poor somebody's hand usage is. Well, that's coaching.
Right.
I don't run away from coaching. I run to coaching.
Love it.
It all is in line with that not seeking comfort, because when you're a coach that's talking about somebody can't learn, you're seeking comfort because your teaching is struggling.
For those of you who don't know, that is Mike Tomlin via the Pivot podcast, when he was talking about the challenge of coaching and what you want to do and what you want to be as a coach. What this tells me is that this coaching staff never intended on Justin Fields being their quarterback. What it tells me is that this coaching staff never quite understood how to properly use Justin Fields. Remember, this is not a guy who has been in the league 6, 7, 8 years. This is a young man who's been in the league for 3 years. This is not some 30-year-old, 29-year-old vet. This young man is 25 years old and barely 25. This is a young man worth investing in, worth trying to get it right. Need I remind you what he's done in his career, which, by the way, if we're looking at it, is a total of 38 starts. 38 starts. That is just over 2 seasons worth of football. Justin Fields has only played a little over 2 seasons worth of football. 38 starts. And in his 38 starts, right, he has accounted for 54 touchdowns. 54 touchdowns in 38 starts. I don't understand how to get around the fact that if Justin Fields was this bad, if he wasn't good at all, if he was this awful, then how did DJ Moore have such a good season? I said that Justin Fields was inactive for 4 games straight, and in one game, game 6, he got hurt. Only passed the ball 10 times, right? In those games where he was essentially not around, you would believe that DJ Moore would have had the same type of games without him as he did with them, right? You would assume that DJ Moore was even, because if Justin Fields was this bad, then the guy that replaced Justin Fields must have done a lot better, right? So from week 6 to week 10, where Justin Fields was not on the field either a lot in week 6 or at all in 7, 8, 9, and 10, this is what DJ Moore stat looked like. 51 receptions, 54 receiving yards. So 51 receiving yards in week 6, 54 receiving yards in week 7, 55 receiving yards in week 8, 44 receiving yards in week 9, 58 receiving yards in week 10. That is a total of 262 yards, right? When you take into account that he had 1,364 yards on the season, that means in those other games where Justin Fields played, he had 1,102 yards. And the 8 receiving touchdowns that he had, none of them came in games where Justin Fields did not play. So he had 1,102 yards and 8 touchdowns in the 12 games that he played with Justin Fields. Again, that's after only having 2 targets for 25 yards in game 1. that seems to be pretty good to me. That seems to be statistics that I would want to be down with. Somebody has to explain to me how DJ Moore, with the worst quarterback that he's had, according to all of these people, had his best season as a pro. Had his best season as a pro underneath Justin Fields. 1,102 yards would have been his his fourth best yards in a year. In 2019, 20, and 21, he had 1,100 yards, but he had more, right? 1,175, 1,193, 1,157. So he had more than his 1,102 that he had in 2023 underneath Fields. But he had them all with 2, 3, and 5 more games than he had with Justin Fields. His second year in the league, he had 1,175. He did that in 15 games. His third year in the league, he had 1,193. He did that in 14 games started. His fourth year in the league, he had 1,157. He did that in 17 games. But in 12 games, he had 1,102 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns, which is one more touchdown than any other year he's had. 2022, he had 7 touchdowns. 23, he had 8. He had 8 touchdowns in 12 games with Justin Fields. How is this dude bad? Somebody explain to me how he can be as bad as described in that video, in that quote, yet DJ Moore have such a good season. And if it was just DJ Moore, then we could go, oh, well, DJ, he had to throw it to somebody, right? If that was the case, then we would say, well, he had to throw it to somebody, and that somebody was DJ Moore. But it wasn't just DJ Moore. Cole Kmet, who is a guy who people thought had a lot of talent, right? But hasn't fully lived up or ascended to a level of an elite level tight end like many believed he had the chance to do. Well, guess what? 2023, he had his best season ever. 2023, he had his breakout season. 73 receptions, 719 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns. The receptions was a record, a personal best. The yards were a personal best. The touchdowns were second to his 2022 season when, guess who was his quarterback? Justin Fields. His catch percentage was 81.1%. Oh, I guess that's because he was just bailing out Justin Fields on bad passes. No, because I watched Cole Kmet drop critical passes. He didn't drop a lot of them, but the ones that he dropped, there were some critical passes that he dropped. How was he able to have this good of a season? It must have been when Justin Fields was not here. Except when we look at the stats, week 6, 9 yards. Week 7, 0 yards. Week 8, 79 yards. Week 9, 55 yards. Week 10, 45 yards. So of his 719 yards, right? 531 of them came in the 12 games that he played with Justin Fields. Of his 6 touchdowns, 4 of them came in the 12 games that he played with Justin Fields. How is he the problem? How was it that he's so bad that nobody couldn't do anything with him, that it was hard to watch? How has Cole Kmet been consistently ascending every season if the quarterback play is so bad? It doesn't make sense. It's a narrative that people have tried to put out there about him to discredit what it is he can do. And I don't know why. DJ Moore averaged 14.2 yards per reception. Cole Kmet averaged 9.8. Tyler Scott, 9.9. St. Brown, 12.4. Claypool, 12.8. Tanyan, 10. Mercedes Lewis, 7.2. Colin Johnson had 1 catch for 11 yards. And speaking of Darnell Mooney, a guy who people believed had the opportunity to be like a really good receiver, except he had the worst catching season in the history of his season. He dropped half the passes that he had coming to him. I'm exaggerating, right? But he dropped a ton of them. And even with his catch percentage at 50.8%, he still had 414 yards receiving. His 12 games with Justin Fields in 2022, 493 yards. And his 1,000 yards and 55, his 1,055 yard season in 2021, that season where he got 140 targets and only caught 81 of them, right? That season where he was balling out, it would be really interesting to know in that season how much of that was with Justin Fields. Oh, look, we have ways to see. Justin Fields started in 2021. Justin Fields started weeks 3 through week 10. In week 3, weeks 3 through week 10. So now I'm going to go back to Darnell Mooney's game logs on 2021 and see what it looked like week 3 through week 10. In week 3, he had 9 yards. Week 4, 125, 35, 45, 39, 64, 41. And in week 10, he had 121 yards. He had 3 touchdowns in that time. Justin Fields went out in 11 and 12. He was inactive, came back in 13 and 14. In 13, he had 19 yards. 14, he had 63 yards. Right? Catch percentage in 13, 20%. Catch percentage in 10, 31%. Catch percentage in 7, 40%. Catch percentage in 9, 50%. Catch percentage in 3, 21%. I love how people want to lay all of this at the feet of Justin Fields as if he didn't have a coaching staff there, right? As if this coaching staff, this coach that saw that he had this eye problem, right? That he had this, his eyes are everywhere. It's awful to watch, right? who was trying to correct it? What did they do to try to correct it? You know what they tried to do to correct it? They ran him. They ran him like a dog. In some cases, they ran him like he was a running back. And you know what he did? Exactly what they asked him to do. He ran. In 2020, after coming from a system in college where he barely ran, he went to Chicago where they tried to make him a wildcat quarterback. And in his first season, he ran 72 times for 420 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was in 10 starts. In 2022, in 15 starts, he ran the ball 160 times for 1,143 yards and 8 touchdowns. He averaged 7.1 yards an attempt. In 2024, battling through injuries and a coaching staff that clearly did not want him out there playing, he had 657 yards on 124 carries. That was still good for 5.3 yards per carry. His career average is 6.2 yards per attempt. He averages over 50 yards rushing. He did what was asked of him. When they asked him to throw the ball, guess what? He threw the ball. When they asked him to run the ball, guess what he did? He ran the ball. And now that he's gone, some anonymous coach decides, I want to kick his back in. Now that he's gone, some anonymous coach wants to say, oh, he wasn't good. He didn't know what he was doing. It was awful. But if Justin Fields came out and said, my time in Chicago was terrible. The coaches didn't know what they were doing. They had us doing plays that didn't make sense. They had people doing things that didn't fit their skill set. They had players playing in positions that didn't fit. They had me making first reads that was not to my best wide receiver, and then they got mad because I was coming off the first read and trying to locate my best receiver. If he came out and said that, if he came out and said they were running me too much, if he came out and said, hey, they just didn't have my best interest at heart, the entire media world, the entire sports world would murder him. The entire sports world would kill him. The entire sports world would say he was soft, say he wasn't accountable. They would say that he wasn't being responsible. He wasn't acting like a quarterback. Quarterbacks don't throw the coaches under the bus. The quarterbacks accept responsibility. Yet, every time we turn around and it doesn't work out with a quarterback, what do we hear from the coaches anonymously? We hear that the player was bad, that the player didn't understand, that the player doesn't know how to act, that the player doesn't understand how to behave, that the player, it's always the player's fault. It's always the player's fault. It's never the coach's fault. At this higher level, where you get to pick the groceries, and now we get to watch them heap praise on Caleb Williams when he has not thrown a football in the NFL. We get to hear them talk about how Caleb Williams is better at this and better at that when he has not thrown a football. I know one thing, it's some real easy ways to check what's going on. Watch how many targets. Watch how many targets Moore gets next year. What's his yards going to be like next year? What's his average yards per target going to be next year? What's the offense going to feel like with Caleb Williams in there? Is it going to feel completely different than what it was with Justin Fields? And don't give me, well, he couldn't run it. You never even tried. And when you had no other choice but to let Justin Fields cook, he cooked masterpieces. 4 touchdown performances, 300-plus yards passing, 400 yards. Every time you were forced to let Justin Fields go ham, he went ham. But it's all his fault. It's all his doing. Nobody else did anything. Nobody else was responsible. That's a mark of bad coaching, ladies and gentlemen. That's how you know that this Bear squad might not be okay, even with all the additions made to make life easier on the quarterback. They might not be good. But now they have the ultimate scapegoat. Oh, it was all Justin Fields' fault. He just wasn't really good. Then how? How was he able to do what he did? Because when there have been quarterbacks who've been bad in the NFL, guess what the top receivers normally do? They normally fall off. They don't normally have career years. He had a career year, and he only got to play with the starting quarterback 12 games, and he only really got targeted in 11 of them. This is how I tell you, you got to watch the narratives that are being spewed about certain players. They want you to believe something is true, so they continue to put it in your face a certain way. They want you to believe Justin Fields is bad. So when he doesn't do things the way other quarterbacks do, they can justify it. Nobody mentions the rushing. They act as if the rushing does not exist. They act as if the only thing that he ever did was pass the ball. It's weird. His vision is awesome when it comes to running, but when it comes to passing, he can't see anything. Okay. Cole Kmet literally upped his catch percentage by almost 20%, if not more. And that was all on Cole Kmet. None of that was the quarterback throwing him catchable balls, throwing him balls that were hard for him to drop. Only for him to still drop some, by the way. DJ Moore had a career year that was all DJ Moore, had nothing to do with Justin Fields, just so we're clear. You guys got to watch it. You got to read the tea leaves. A WNBA action is back tonight. If you're somebody who likes to put some wager downs on WNBA games, there's some real tasty things out here. We'll be here to talk about it tomorrow. That's all the time I have today, ladies and gentlemen. This is Talk Spicy on the Riptide Media Networks. I am Coach Gene Clemens. Rate the show, comment, agree, disagree. But whatever you do, keep it spicy. 5-star ratings are appreciated everywhere you can rate. And if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. The Bleacher Brothers are next. Until next time,